Hello, Bob Hughes here with JD Squared, and welcome to our first video describing version 3 software for the MAD Plasma Cutter. What the purpose of this presentation is to show people who are currently running version 2 on their MAD the similarities with version 3 without going into a lot of details about the new features such as program restart and some other ones. Those are much better presented in their own videos, so that's what we're going to do. Anyway, this software has been a monumental task. It's taken over a year to write. Devin's got thousands and thousands of hours in it, written over 60,000 lines of code to bring it to this point. It's taken longer than we would have liked for it to come out, but you know, when you're shooting for the stars, sometimes it takes you a little bit longer to get there. But we're very pleased with what we've come up with, and we're hoping you will be too. For instance, one feature he's put into it that was very time consuming is when we load a program. Let's go ahead and do that. Just like in version 2, we're going to import a file. Let's bring in the big program. Bring that one in. I'll describe something to you real quick. It detected an older file is what it's saying. And what happened is they changed the format for the G code from version 2 to version 3. So it's detected an older format. So it's literally saying previous version code detected, converted the current code requirements. The original file has not been modified. And you just select OK. And what that means is we don't want to overwrite your version 2 software, because let's say you have multiple MAD machines and you want to try version 3 on one of them, but you want to leave the other ones in production for a while so that you don't, you make sure everything's good to go to your liking. This way we haven't overwritten a file. Now there are ways to convert the file to the newer format. We'll talk about that in another video. But one of the things we're talking about right now is how much work was involved to bring out version 3. If you look at what we're looking at right here, this here is actually an interpreter that Devin has written that reads through all this G code and displays on the screen what the machine will do, not what you think the original artwork is. And the reason for that is if you have a CAM program and something's wrong with the post processor that's creating the G code, let's say it makes incorrect G code, well, when you load it into the new version 3, it will show you what the machine is going to do, and you could see an easy effort. Well, it turned out that was, you could imagine, that's a monumental task to do that. And of course, all the other stuff he's written. So that was some of the reasons for the delay, but we think it was well worth it. Anyway, let's get on with talking about the similarities and the slight differences in version 2 features. Once again, we've already imported a file just like version 2. Let's go over here to, we're not going to worry about the open jobs, save jobs. These tabs are also version 3 specific features, and I'll hint about what they do in a little while, but right now let's just bounce over them and refer to a later video as far as their functionality goes. We're going to turn on the power just like version 2, and we're going to home just like version 2. Now, notice as I move the cursor left or right, there's a gray background on these buttons. But if I go over e-stop, there's no gray background. In order to conserve real estate so that we could get more information on the screen, we've had to consolidate action buttons with indicator buttons. So right here, e-stop, there's no gray, which means it's not an action button. Gray indicates that you could click it and it will do something. This is an indicator. Obviously, e-stop, the last thing you want to do is override e-stop. So there's no way to do that. Now, if e-stop is triggered just like version 2, it'll be solid red. Now, we've done all this. We could park the machine back to the lower left or whatever action, just like version 2. Breakaway, this is dual action now. If you're running the machine and the torch breaks away, this will go solid red just like version 2. However, if you want to override, let's say the machine cruises along and something happens, a tip up or whatever, and the torch gets knocked loose, well, the machine's going to stop. This is going to go bright red. The torch override now is no longer a separate button. You just click on this, and there's your red X right there telling you that we've overridden the torch and you can move the machine. Same thing with the ohmic probe. If you click on it, it's showing X. We're now going to use the floating head only to touch off, not the ohmic probe. Laser right here, you click it on just like version 2, it turns the laser on and off. Devin has made a change that the laser itself now will automatically turn off after 2 minutes, and that, that prevents the problem of accidentally leaving the laser on. You don't realize you've done it because you got this bright torch firing off, stuff like that. So that will lengthen the life of the laser if you occasionally make that mistake. Now, right next to it, we have a stop button, but we have one over here too. Why? If you go to the tab MDI, which has been slightly changed, you can type in commands here. Well, if you type in a movement command, notice our run stuff is gone. This is the button that will allow you to stop the machine running in MDI mode. Let's go back to this here. Now, you've got a primary head here. You could pick your primary head laser or whatever. And what this is going to do, it's going to move that tool to the work offsets 0 position, or wherever you're at, it's going to move that tool. So just like in version 2, you could have the laser selected, and then you select the torch, and you see the torch move over to where the laser was. That's the exact same functionality. The difference in version 2 to 3 is you no longer use that functionality to set your work coordinate. We've actually improved on it, and we'll touch on that in a minute. Moving to the right here, you have your different tabs. We see Workspace, which is your run environment. MDI, manual data input, you could put things in. Now let me show you something else pretty cool. Let's just go right here and type that in, and you'll see here we got a notification, right? If we go back to Workspace, remember if you had a few errors, let's say the torch broke away or something else happened, these errors here would stack up, and you have to clear each and every one of them. Well, what Devin did, he said, no, let's just only show one at a time. So you click on it and they're all cleared, right? But let's just say you're getting help, or you want to know what's gone on in the past. I want to know what all the errors were. You can now go to the notifications tab, select it, and it'll show there your history. So if we were to go to, let's just say this one here, it shows that. Let's pick up this one here. We show that. We click on it, dismiss it. Go back to notifications. There's your history. This was the last message that popped up. So that was a feature to help debugging and without cluttering up your screen. Now, going over here to offset pages. This is new. If you look, you'll see tool offsets because we've now built in router functionality, like wood router functionality, into the MAD software. You can now have different tools with different offsets, whatever you like to set up. Over here, same information. You can move the machine around. You can do what you want to find the offsets. Here's your coordinate systems that are active, except, pretty much like version 2. Now, gauge block height, once again, we'll talk about that later. That has to do with setting your tools if you have a wood router in the machine. Now, going over to the settings tab, you've got pretty much the same stuff you've seen. You've got your machine information, what kind of machine you got, any information. Now, this is a feature that I begged and pleaded and basically became obnoxious and annoying to Devin, to where he finally gave me my wish. I'm a little bit older and I'm not a gamer, so I don't really like using the system of WASDF to where a D moves the egg, like you walk to the right or you run to the right because you're a gamer. A lot of young people love that feature. Everybody over the age of 40 doesn't like it. We just want arrows, page up, page down for the Z. Well, I guess Devin got tired of listening to me cry, and he gave me my wish. So now you could go to key maps, to where you set an arrow key, I apply the map. Now if I hit the right arrow key, I'm moving to the right, left, up, etc. He actually went one step further. I guess he didn't want me to complain about anything. Maybe it has to do with maybe a remote control, or something like that, Xbox controller or something. You can now teach a key. So let's say we want a different key that'll move the positive key, move X plus deal. You hit that, and let's just say we're going to hit, I don't know, the J key for some reason. We now have set J key as moving the torch to the right. So that's a pretty nice feature right there. I really love that feature. Attachments, all same as Model 2. Laser, your offsets from your head, the whole bit. Same thing with the probe, stuff like that. Automatic torch height control, things that you're pretty much familiar with already. If anything here you're not familiar with, it'll be covered in another video. Go to the last tab, Plasma Tech, and you have things you're familiar with. You got your name of your power unit, the manufacturer, your consumables with part numbers, but he's added a sysgas because we have now supporting plasma units that can use different gases other than just air, argon, etc. In fact, we have one customer who has a 300 amp power unit, thermodynamics on I believe it's an A300, on a 4x4 machine, and that thing has quite a few different gases that are available to it. Well, version 3 will handle that scenario. Also, you'll have other gases if you're marking with a plasma cutter, they can do it. So all that's in version 3. Now, materials, same thing. You can create materials. You can do your own thing. Plasma processes, new to version 3. Cut, light marking, heavy marking, dimpling. Once again, looking for a video specific to that right here. Here's your table. It's going to be just like your version 2 where all your settings are, stuff like that. Let's go back to the workspace. Okay, I'm going to hit the zoom all button over here to bring in this right here. Let's start over here to the left side and we'll work our way down. All this is the same as what you have. The run button, the pause, and stop. He's added step because if you're using a wood router, for instance, you may want to let it cut one line and stop and then step to the next one. So you're basically seeing the code do this, stepping through the code, right? You're never going to do that with a plasma unit because if you step it, that means the plasma torch stop, which means it's going to blow a hole. Torch height control is going to have a hissy fit. Bad things are going to happen. But with the scriber or something like that, yeah, you may want to stop it and then step it or something like that. So that gives you that option right there. Reset control, reload main. That's a discussion for another video. It's a version 3. It's just going to reset the control to known values. We'll talk about that in another video. Override, just like your version 2. You got your feed rate. You could move feed rate up and down, or you could type it in, whatever you want to do. Torch height control. Remember, gray background means dual action. If we hit dry run, it's going to turn on arc OK because we're basically faking to the control that the torch says it's good. And you can now run the program in dry run mode. If we come up here and run, you'll actually see the torch. There she's moving around, Let's go ahead and stop that. Now, right here, you could force torch on, also similar to what you would see in turn off dry run, of course. Force the torch on just like you would have in version 2, and it's going to tell you the torch is on. Torch height control, only real change here is, once again, different button layout. You can lock it out and unlock it out. Tells you if it's enabled and active. Active button tells you the torch height control is active. But we've had people ask us, well, it says it's active. How do I know it's really active? Well, what Devin did, he put the applied offset in. Now, what happens is when the torch first touches off, fires off, it'll move to cut height, and then it's going to correct itself, right, after it's moved a little bit. Well, the applied offset at that point is going to tell you how much it's moved, and that may help you determine, am I having a little bit of an issue with the consumables wearing out or whatever. Now, there is one issue with this. If you're dealing with a wavy plate or something, well, let's say you got a 1/4 inch wave in the middle. The torch height control obviously is going to move up a 1/4 inch because it's following material. Your applied offset right here will register that 1/4 inch. So it's not really going to tell you how much higher or lower than the ideal cut height it is. It's telling you this is where I moved from where you started the cut height at. Now, where that becomes valuable is if you have a suspicion that for some reason torch height control is not actually active, you can look at that and you'll actually see the numbers change, and you can go, oh, well, heck, it's working. I've got another issue is stopped up. Maybe I got the wrong consumables in it. Lord knows what could happen. Let's move on to another problem. And of course, voltage overrides, exact same as version 2. Now we're going to skip this section for just 1 second. We're going to go to your work offsets. What is the difference between the MAD 2? Let's go ahead and move the torch over, and I'm using my arrow keys, and we're moving on down, and I can control shift to go faster or slower, just like like what you would do on version 2. So I'm going to move it over. I'm going to move over a little bit right here. Okay, now what I've got to do is I have to set my work offset, right? So over here, you see measure work offset with laser pointer. Now, if I pick the primary head, wherever the primary cutting head is, it's going to use that position to work the offset. But if I want to say, hey, go to laser pointer, I go up here, I turn on the laser pointer. Now I can move the laser pointer to wherever I want, and I can set 0. Now, if you notice, the work offset over here has changed to 0, 0, 0. There's your machine coordinates, and we're looking pretty good right there. So if I was to move the head, let's move it out completely. Let's zoom out a little bit. You can see it way up here. I can now hit, just like in version 2, the go to 0 button, and there goes the torch to that position. Now, what this indicator here is showing you the live position of the torch at the machine in G54 work coordinates. So you're seeing it move around right there. Probe Z0, we'll talk about that in another video. Now, so you'll see other information, all this stuff over here. All that's pretty much the same as version 2, no problem. Now, last but not least, we've changed, or Devin has changed, the way you pick consumables and material. And what happened, version 1 software, you had to tell it what consumables you had, what metal, etc. Well, that meant that people had to go to a manual and look this up, and that turned out to be a problem. So a lot of support calls like it's not cutting good, and almost all of them were wrong consumables, wrong settings. It was a nightmare. So what Devin did in version 2, he made it to where you pick the consumables that you've got loaded in the machine, and then it'll tell you, can I cut this piece of metal or not? So if you loaded up a piece of 1/2-inch steel and you had a 45 amp consumables and it wasn't going to cut that, it'll tell you, you can't cut it. Reload different consumables. And that worked out great. Our support calls plummeted. Everybody was happy. Well, he thought about it a little more, and he said, you know what? We know what material we're cutting. And this has to do with future enhancements coming out, for instance, like the bracket library and everything, to where you may have the same program, but you want to cut different thicknesses of metal. Don't tell it what consumables in it. Let's just tell it what's in the machine first, because it's a known factor. So what he did, he changed it. So the first thing you change now is the material. Tell it what's in the machine. Material, and then the thickness. Now, if you notice, he's also gave you the gauge numbers with the thicknesses of material, which is very handy. So you don't have to know what 12 gauge, you now know it's 0.105. Over here, this is added for version 3, flat, wavy, corrugated. Don't worry about that. Once again, version 3 feature. I'll talk about it later. All right, consumables. You have cut processes. With this particular power unit, the Power Max 45 XP, it can do light marking, heavy marking, dimpling, or cutting. The process we've selected is cutting. So we're going to go up here to the group, and it's going to tell us that we're going to get a fine cut shielded or unshielded, but we can't use a regular shielded or a marking dimpling to cut that material. We can only use these. So anything below the incompatible line, you cannot use for that process. So we've kind of helped you right there. We told you straight up that this won't work. Now, if you had a Power Max 85 and you said, hey, I want to cut, real thin metal, but I've got 45 amp I've got 85 amp consumables loaded, you're going to pick your metal up here, then it's going to tell you, you can't use those consumables, you got to change it. And we feel this is a much better way of doing it. Now, so let's just pick fine cut shielded. Here, air. Notice we have argon is incompatible because we're cutting, and you can't cut with this power unit with argon. You can mark with it if you had a different cut process, etc. I'll talk about that in another video. Same thing with your shield gas, So let's move on. So you pick all that. Similar to version 2, you've got your Pierce counts, you've got your arc timer, you can clear statistics for that specific consumable groups, same as you did before. Now, here we are, cut process. Custom. Why is it custom? Well, there's no settings here that are actually correct for what we're getting ready to cut. Now, if we come along and we pick a quality, 3 or 5, remember 5, the bigger the number being better, now we fill all this in. We tell you what amps to set the unit at. And to give you a teaser, one of the features that Devin, once we've got, make sure we don't have any bugs in the software and everybody's happy, one of the features that he's going to put in is the ability of the software to automatically set your your power unit to the correct amperage if you have that option available in your power unit. So, but currently, just like version 2, we're telling you what to set it at. You'd walk over, set the power unit to 45 amps, off you go. Now, let's just say we're cutting corrugated metal and we want to raise the torch height to 100 thou so that we essentially can clear the torch going up and down the corrugated metal, right? Notice it's moved it back to a custom setting because we're no longer on a standard setting. Now, how would you do this in the future? Every time you loaded that program, do you really want to have to remember all your custom settings for whatever you did? And let's just say, for instance, we had one gentleman out there and he's cutting fish out of corrugated metal. He's an artist and all, and it looks like the fish is swimming. It's really, really cool if you've seen the video. Well, he would have to literally change all these settings every time he loaded that program. So what Devin did was add the job function. So right now you can come along and save job. Let's just save it as, oh, I don't know, it just doesn't matter, you know. We'll say that is that right there. You say, sure, overwrite it. The next time we loaded this job, not that program, but if we didn't import it, we loaded the job, it will automatically set all this for you. And what it did, it combined all your custom settings with the program and placed them in a single job file. It did not overwrite your original program. So you don't have to worry about, oh my gosh, I've changed all this stuff. How am I going to get back to 0? It's all in your job file. You could start over. That is a really, really cool feature right there. So anyway, that's pretty much described the similarities and the slight differences. You know, I think a talk jog is all the same. Same with all this. Here's your code over here. Now, I'm going to leave you with one little teaser right here. Obviously, version 3 was all about program restart. And even though this is not a video talking about that, you know, come on, you know, what kind of person would leave you hanging right there? So let's go ahead and zoom in, and I'm going to show you something. We're going to zoom in right there. You see that red point? We're going to restart from there. Now, as soon as I clicked it over here, and I say, I want a point restart. If I click on point restart, our run button now has changed to restart at point, you know? Well, let's just hit that and watch this. You're going to like this, you know? Off we go. And there we are. We are now restarted from a particular point. If I want to use the thing and go to the top, we're cutting along. You can also cut a lines and all. And I just wanted to show you that. It gets you a little bit excited. We're very excited about this release. Anyway, you know what? Thank you for watching. We've worked hard. We really hope the software meets all of your requirements. And you have a good day and happy cutting. See you later.